Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Welcome to the Jason Rhoades Variety Show. I'm Russell Salmon, Director of Public Programs here at the Gallery and one of your hosts today. And we're simply thrilled you all are here for this special program on the occasion of the exhibition Jason Rhoades Drive 2 at Hauser Wirth 22nd Street, which sadly closes today. So if you haven't seen it yet, run over there after this. We thought rather than having a panel discussion, it would be way more fun to hear from multiple voices in quick-fire presentations on various themes around Rhoades' car projects. Today we'll hear from curator Dr. Adrienne Edwards on Power 106 FM radio, art historian David Lewis on Francis Picabia and his race cars. We'll have a recorded response to Jason Rhoades Drive 2 from Alex Da Corte, and we'll wrap it all up with a very special performance by Morgan Bassichis from Chuck Mee's play Under Construction, which was inspired by Rhoades' work. But guiding us through our journey today is the one and only Ingrid Schaffner, senior curator here at the Gallery and curator of Jason Rhoades Drive in LA and Jason Rhoades Drive 2 here in New York. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ingrid Schaffner.
Thank you, Russell Salmon. Welcome, everybody. So the closing of Drive 2 naturally begs the question, what and where is Drive 1? So the original Drive is a year-long exploration of the work of California sculptor Jason Rhoades, a body of work that he called his car projects. And relative to the epically scaled installations that the California artist is known for making, which made him a leading figure of the international art world in the 1990s, while he was based in Los Angeles. Unlike those works, the car projects are a relatively little known, not deeply explored body of work, with the recent exception being that last year, 2022, the Whitney Biennial, Adrienne Edwards and her co-curator David Breslin brought Rhoades' Caprice Auto project to the plaza outside of the Whitney Museum. So we're cracking open the car projects. Drive 1 has been taking place in Los Angeles. It opened in February. It's a four-part exploration, 4 exhibitions. So if you know our space in Los Angeles, one of those large warehouse spaces has been dedicated to this exhibition that has been unfolding one installation, iteration, exhibition at a time. So it started in February with the parking space, with 4 of Rhoades' ready-made car sculptures, plus the video of Jason driving and explaining his concepts and the history for the car projects that's on view at 22nd Street. So that started in February in the parking space in Los Angeles. Then in April came the pit. So the 4 cars moved to sort of the periphery of the space to make room for a related body of sculptures and other projects that Jason made with the cars. So that would include the car stop, the book stop edition that's here on our marquee. So following the parking space, or the pit, came the racetrack. So the cars were loaded onto a truck and started making their way here to New York. And we made space for, to look at a body of works that were really happenings that Jason made that took the form of circuit races on racetracks with kit cars, mini bikes, and go-karts. So that was the pit. This September, we arrived in Los Angeles at the Garage, and we'll talk more about the Garage at the end of the variety show. So this coincided with the opening here of Drive 2. So anyways, the exhibition in Los Angeles closes on July 5th, so plenty of time to come see it and me there in LA. So to Drive 2, which we could say has like been a Manhattan detour and an episode in its own right of Drive. To wrap up the afternoon's variety show of acts adjacent to Jason Rhoades' car projects, we have the artist's own words. So from Volume A, Rhoades Referenz. This is a 1998 artist book that Rhoades created in the form of a dictionary of key terms to his own work. So we're going to read the entry on car projects. All right. Okay. Car projects. A group of works by Jason Rhoades that began with a Fiero as an outdoor sculpture in Swedish erotica and Fiero parts, and is still in progress. The types used so far are a Fiero, a Caprice, a Ligier, a skinned Fiero, a Ferrari, and an Impala, along with the installation, the intersection of the auto pursuits, 4 Cars for Venice. The deal whereby the artist exchanges his Caprice for a Ferrari, Traffic, is also part of the project. The Caprice is exchanged for a Ferrari from Switzerland. An Impala is parked for a time outside the place set aside for the curator of the show, Harold Zeman, and also serves as a link between Zurich and the Kunsthal in Nuremberg. The purple penis and the Venus. The idea that you never know for certain where the car is, placing of sculpture, is part of the project. Under the titles of Museum der Annäherung, Museum of Approach, and the Museum der Entfernung, Museum of Distance, the car becomes an exhibition in its own right, shuttling between the 2 venues. The use of assorted car types in Rhoades' work derives from Francis Picabia.
And now our first presenter today, fresh off the heels of the opening of her mind-blowing exhibition at the Whitney Museum, Edges of Ailey. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Adrienne Edwards.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Russell and Ingrid for having me here today. Ingrid and I have had many wonderful conversations about many things, but Jason in particular, and congratulations on your shows, and this spotlight on Jason's work. And thank you for your work. Thank you. I'm just going to dive in. I've been asked so many times that I lose count what it is about Jason Rhoades' art that I like. I guess we are unlikely like-minded. Maybe it's that we both were in 4-H. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, 4-H claims its intent is to empower young people with the skills to lead for a lifetime, to make healthy choices that you live life with intentionality and purpose. I guess it's a worthy ambition. Maybe it's because we both grew up in the rural United States, although in very different regions, him, Northern California, and me, South Carolina. But they likely have similar numbers of NASCAR fans. Scenes that hold the kind of stew of things, people, histories that make you a little bit inappropriate. Maybe I too think the universe lies between my long black legs. Maybe it's my curiosity about his acute sensitivity to the entanglement of accumulation, acceleration, precarity, speculation, and desire, need of commodity culture in the United States. Maybe it's because I think he was one of the most astute and profoundly complex makers of work about identity, It's just that he never gets considered as such, which is perhaps because he deftly slipped around questions that might pin him down through his lyrical, even if puzzling, responses to them, letting the language of art formalism do the heavy lifting. He could get away with that in a way that I could never and wouldn't want to. Yet I also appreciate such an inclination, or maybe I'm just a tiny bit jealous. Maybe it's the Easter eggs that are slyly embedded in his works, there for us to discover their layered meanings, the realm of secrets, gossip, myth, and fabulation. Take, for example, Sutter's Mill, which we showed in Quiet as It's Kept, that Ingrid mentioned, the 22 Whitney Biennial. The night before Thanksgiving in 2021, I sat down to watch Ken Burns' documentary, The West, made in 1996. There was a section in it about the California gold rush, and it highlighted this surprising story. John A. Sutter's sawmill, where gold was found in 1848, set off the frenzy for the metal. A decade later, the land where the mill was sited was purchased by Nancy Goetsch, a formerly enslaved woman whose owner took her and her husband to the mines, was freed when California joined the Union in 1850, ultimately becoming the wealthiest 19th century Black landowner with over 400 acres. The majority of this was eventually taken by the state under eminent domain laws to build a public park. The mill, this land was located along the American River near Rhoades' childhood home in Newcastle. An incredible coincidence, the wonderful Rachel Kadori, an artist and Jason's widow, came to see me at the museum on October 13th of 2021, 5 weeks before I saw Burns' film, and it was she who suggested this piece for the biennial. I don't know if Jason knew of this history, but he spent some of his 4-H days in that park where the family is buried and acknowledged by name in the orchards, the trails, the house, and the blacksmith shop. Maybe it's because I too cruised around in an old restored car thinking and talking while listening to hip hop and R&B at the same time as Jason did. My ride of choice was a 1978 navy blue convertible VW Bug with a white top, a gift from my grandparents when I turned 16. It had been salvaged and pristinely refurbished by a Confederate flag waving redneck in a tiny crossroads called Honeypath, South Carolina. A VW devotee who had shells of these cars spread across a couple of acres. I so loved this car. I would drive it down country roads lined with lanky pines and mountains of kudzu vines along swampy lakes, listening much to the same music we hear on Power 106, which is LA's hip-hop station in Jason's Chevy Caprice as you were coming in. For me, it was a way of getting free, maybe too free. One time I was out driving for hours and a sheriff pulled me over. My grandmother had called in an APB for me, telling me it was time to come home. He was also a cousin. And speaking about his Caprice, Jason said, quote, "You don't know if the car functions as an authority figure or as a rebellious white trash hot rod or with the booming rhythm like a gangbanger car. It's caught between the three." Jason made art out of almost anything and everything. The Caprice was originally designed for federal and state employees, particularly the police. And reflecting on its origins and the role as an artwork, he said, quote, "We will begin in early 1996, the last year of the Caprice in production, with the purchase of the Caprice from a company that converts cop cars into taxis. It will be used as a space to wonder where you've been and where you're going. The auto is the inseparable tool to carry out the daily work in and out of the studio, to carry out the latest whim of a large project with speed, power, and confidence," end quote. In his Caprice and his other Chevy, the Impala, Jason would listen to Power 106, which he often recorded on cassette tapes and played in the cars. Throughout the videos of him driving, we hear broadcasts featuring ads for Halloween hip-hop concerts, home theater systems, Columbus Day sales, Worldwide Wrestling Federation matches, the California AIDS Prevention Campaign, car insurance, and late 90s hits such as The Far Side, She Keeps on Passing Me By, Total, What About Us, Mary J. Blige, Love Without a Limit, Ice-T, You Played Yourself, LL Cool J, Tina Got a Big Old Butt, Jay-Z, Sunshine, Snoop Dogg, We Just Want to Party with You, Biggie Smalls, Juicy, and Hypnotized. I was always impartial to Biggie. So how are we to think about why this car and music were so resonant with him? The answer is somehow enveloped and consumed in the metaphor of night, our earthly black hole, which is an all-encompassing, radically unknowable, vast expanse of simultaneously nothing and everything, having the ability to hold all light, all matter within it, like a pitch-perfect black body in thermodynamics. Let me amplify this through Jack Kerouac, who writing in 1958 explains, quote, "At lilac in evening, I walk with every muscle aching amongst the lights of 27th and Welton in Denver, in the Denver colored section, wishing I were a Negro, feeling that the best of the white world had to offer was not enough ecstasy for me, not enough life, joy, kicks, darkness, music, not enough night." I want to sit with Jason's description of the caprice as caught and not enough night as a metaphor for Blackness. In preparing for today, I did a couple of Google searches that led to some pretty funny results. The searches were simple: white boys and hip hop, and rap songs that mentioned caprices and impalas. What became clear is that there was in the late 90s and even in the following years a lot of angst about why young suburban white guys had shifted their tastes from rock and punk to rap music. By the time Jason was cruising in his Capri, hip-hop was everywhere. An important lead-up was the addition of a rap category to the 1989 Grammy Awards. Tellingly, The Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff won that year. It's important because in 1989, NWA released Straight Outta Compton. Movies with really different than The Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff. Movies with hip-hop stars proliferated, like Kid and Play's House Party in 1990. It had sequels in 91 and 94. Boys in the Hood, starring Ice Cube. New Jack City, featuring Ice-T, both 1991. Juice with Tupac Shakur in 1992. Poetic Justice, also with Tupac in 93. Who Can Forget Friday with Ice Cube in 1995, and on and on. While hip-hop is an incredibly diverse genre, these rappers, excepting Kid and Play and others like them, told stories. Some were real-life experiences delivered with monumental hubris, masculine verve, and a good amount of hyperbole that was very much about being from and of the hood. This combined with the music industry machinery, which promoted them not only as the baddest, as in the best, stars around, but that they were precisely because they were bad, as in threatening and criminal-minded. That they were positioned and perceived by others as rebellious was racial. This is to say, very American. I will never forget the feeling I had when attending a pool party in 1997 in Baldwin Hills, admittedly a bougie black neighborhood, as helicopters, colloquially ghetto birds, surveilled overhead while we partied on. Or the rows of men bent over hoods of their lowriders being interrogated by police on Crenshaw Boulevard. It is here in that we can situate Jason's description of having been caught, as in its etymological sense from the Old French, to take, to capture, to hurt, to hunt, to pursue, to drive. And drive he did. Perhaps Jason's interest was driven by the fact that hip-hop tests the relationship, which is to say the limits between race, class, and freedom in America, evident not only in Sutter's Mill, his Mason-Dixon linear work, and of course, the great Black Pussy, but many others as well. The truth is, Black music in this country has always done this. Leroy Jones, also Amiri Baraka, explained it this way when he was reflecting on jazz music, quote, "The real point was not the white America increased understanding of the Negro, but rather the fact that the Negro had created a music that offered such a profound reflection of America that it could attract white Americans to want to play it or listen to it for exactly that reason. The only reason jazz and blues musicians who were similarly scorned as threats to white society were not as famous is because they were neither on MTV or BET, nor played on stations other than black radio during the years of segregation. They were not in the same circuit of capital or the vectors that ensure you make money and gain notoriety. It was a different hustle. Rap artists' sheer ubiquity in the 90s and thereafter meant there was an intense proximity structured, AKA perceived access, between the black rap star and the suburban white kid. However, this familiarity with the pop of blackness tended to conflate, or at a minimum give a false sense of knowledge and intimacy with black life. If nothing else, hip hop's undeniable attraction, the whole showing off, image making of its style, flaunting a souped up ride, carrying a fat bankroll, decked out in luxury brands, neck weighted with blinged out pendants on thick rope chains, to those white boys like Jason, is to do nothing more than knowingly piss somebody off. As Zora Neale Hurston reminds us in her description of the characteristics of black expression, discord is more natural than accord. Thank you.
Picabia, Francis, artist, born, Okay, next definition. Picabia, Francis, artist. Born Paris, 1879, died 1953, French painter and writer. Picabia consistently and programmatically tried to evade categorization. In 1914, moves to New York, where he works with Marcel Duchamp and other artists. In 1916, returns to Europe, and in 1920, joins the Surrealists. Beginning in the mid-1920s, he paints representationally again, producing consciously banal images, and does not return to abstract painting until the 1940s. An enthusiastic car lover, Picabia owned a large collection of automobiles, the 160 cars of Picabia that find their way into Jason Rhoades' car projects, the Picabia car with porno and ejection seat, the intersection of the auto pursuits, 4 Cars for Venice. Okay, with Picabia, we get 2 definitions from the Rhoades reference. Okay. So next. The Picabia car with porno and ejection seat. Work of art by Jason Rhoades, part of the intersection of the auto pursuits, 4 Cars for Venice. The car is not a real car, but a makeshift, almost picturesque notion of one. Fake. The title alludes to Francis Picabia, artist, car lover, and car collector. The central element of this sculpture is a large beanbag filled with soft substance that, as the stylized body of a horse, had already invited the cuddling and caressing in Una Memento, The Theater in My Dick, A Look to the Physical Ephemeral. The emotional level of the sculpture is punctuated by porn magazines, pornography, and their intensely physical depictions of the sexual act, sexuality. In the cockpit, there's a computer on whose screen, played from a CD-ROM, pinup girls appear. The noise produced by the loading of the images is amplified by an electronic device so that it sounds like a car engine is being revved impatiently by a driver bursting with sexual potency.
And next up, David Lewis to take us down the road of Picabia and his race cars. Please welcome David Lewis.
This changes the slides. Okay. Thank you, Ingrid, for the invitation. I'll say something about the history of that invitation in a few minutes. Thank you, Russell, for everything, and thank you, Adrienne, for a journey that's going to be very difficult to follow. But Ingrid asked me about Picabia's cars. Picabia's cars is a bit of, it's a myth, it's a legend, which Jason knew. I think he said 160. I don't know if that's true. But here are these images which Jason probably knew. Picabia was very, he was quite rich. He was an only child. He was the heir to quite a lot of privilege and wealth. And even Jason, I think, imagined that Picabia was interested in escaping boundaries. But from my time working on Picabia, I think it came very naturally to him. I don't think he worked very hard to escape. I think it was quite the opposite. I think nothing really caught him for too long, and his life and his privilege and his personality allowed that to be the case. Now, what made Picabia so powerful an artist, and Jason so energized by him, is the way Picabia made that energy into a practice, into a way of making art. And that's why Picabia, to Jason and to so many artists for so long, has been a figure of energy and permissiveness and possibility. So we start here with some images of Picabia's cars. I also know nothing about cars personally. And I certainly know nothing about cars 100 years ago. So let's just start with images of Picabia's cars. These are all pre-war, or right before in 1913, Picabia went to New York with Duchamp, as Jason noted. It's kind of transatlantic avant-garde fame before he would, of course, reject that in a variety of ways. But what I want to do, on the right you see two of Picabia's cars, including that great Bugatti from the post-war period, and that's Picabia kind of standing, looking surly on the wheel. And some of Jason's car projects. These are the circuit races that Ingrid had mentioned. The ranch project, I think that's Jason and one of his guys. And I want to point out the emphasis in all of this on circles as a formal device. The wheels of the cars, in that image of Picabia that we saw, the emphasis on the circular steering wheel, the circuit racing, and how, is this mic cutting in and out? Am I? Okay. So the snowball, which is, of course, a circular image or metaphor or language, and also something that appears and disappears, and how both Picabia and Jason are extremely interested in becoming and transforming, and things arriving, ending, and then being born or becoming new again. And that's, for me, one of the important things about what Ingrid is doing with Jason, and what Jason offers and what Picabia offered, is this perpetual kind of newness, this perpetual way of beginning again. And that's also why artists, among all people, are most attracted to them over and over. Okay, there's an image of the snowball. I want to draw attention to Jason's use of the tires. Again, this constant, almost silly stacking of circular motifs, which is very typical of Picabia as well. Okay, a brief personal note. I was once an art historian. I wrote about Picabia, and then I had a gallery, which when Ingrid invited me to be a part of the variety show, I was in the last exhibition at my gallery, which was called Everybody Loves Picabia, which was a celebration of Picabia's permissive power with artists, especially, because not everybody loves Picabia, but artists have always very much loved Picabia. And that's when I got to know that amazing Jason Rhoades sculpture, which Ingrid brought up. I actually knew it with a different title, so I wanted to ask you. I knew it as fucking Picabia car with ejector seat.
Yeah, well, the title's Snowball in Jason's work and change.
Exactly, which Picabia did as well. Picabia would paint over works. He had very little sense of attachment to the finished product. He would recreate over and over, and that recreation, rebirth, enormous energy, which I find in both artists. So this is the last exhibition at the gallery. This is where and when in the spring Ingrid invited me to the variety show, and I would note the Picabia painting on the right, and in the back, if you can make out, there's a Jason neon sculpture in the back right. And at this point, I became very interested in the Picabia car, the fucking Picabia car, the Picabia car with porn and ejection seat. Ejection seat is also a very Picabia metaphor of escape, of mobility, of speed as the power of mobility. So, of course, I was delighted a few months later in a new role to find that very work in Ingrid's Drive 2 here, and that same Picabia behind it. And we're going to look a little closer at this work because in a way, it's a very reflective work about Jason's practice and Jason's thinking about the car projects and what he learns from Picabia. I would note the wheel or axle in the back left, which we're going to zoom in on, and Jason decorating this wheel, again, a circular motif, with Picabia cars, images of those legendary albums of Picabia cars and his ability to draw energy and inspiration from it. And this Picabia from the 1940s, one of the so-called wartime nudes. That painting was shown at Hauser Wirth in 1997. I don't know, but I suspect Jason knew very much about it, so there's a kind of intertextual game going on here. Playing with the circumstances, creating and recreating from the material at hand. Okay, and this leads me all the way back to Picabia and his great aesthetic statement. You can basically learn everything you need to know about Picabia from this quote about his driving, so I think it's worth reading aloud. I'm a bad European the way I'm a bad American, the way I'm a bad painter, a bad writer, a bad husband, all true to various degrees. But I drive automobiles very well. So amazingly, Picabia privileges his driving over all the other things he's famous for. I would so like to paint the way I drive an automobile, 130 kilometers an hour without running over anyone, in Paris, of course. Now, it seems funny, and Picabia was, of course, the funny guy. That's his moniker for himself. But it's actually extremely on point aesthetically, because speed for Picabia is the power of transformation. It's the power to zip out of what is into what is next. And not running over anyone is very interesting because this is set at a time where the Dadaists are really engaging in a lot of kind of, I would say, late Hegelian aesthetics of negativity, not to put too fine a point on it. And Picabia doesn't like that. He wants to say yes to things. He wants things that turn him on, that make his life active. He doesn't want to critique or tear down. So even talking about cars, he's giving us a sense of his aesthetic and why he jumps from thing to thing so often. Anyway, my friend, the good European, is a good writer, a good draftsman, a good poet, but he doesn't know how to drive an automobile. So there you have the contrast of America as this realm of kind of mechanical and sensory possibility and power versus dead, old, fusty Europe. I don't either, says Picabia. Now, this is, I think, also very worth noting because Picabia is not attached to his own achievement. He's willing to let it go in the name of what's next. The achievement is like a circle, like a snowball. He builds it, he throws it, and then it goes away. It dissolves. It will be very amusing to drive an automobile in two directions, one forward, one backward, especially if the car were painted pink and black. Enough, this is getting old. So he then snowballs his own aesthetic statement here, which seems silly, but I would argue is actually very specific. Okay, I want to conclude with some images from Picabia's play or ballet, Relâche, which means relax. It was shown it was produced by the Ballet Suédoise in 1924. And I pair it here with Rhoades' Young White Grand Prix. And I hope some of the aesthetic, the circuit of Rhoades circuit racing, of Relâche, the obsession with circles, with mobility, with speed, and all the kind of possibilities they lead to as transformative, even rebirth, are starting to link between the two artists. I would note that the stage, those circles and Relâche, those are car headlights. which would turn on and off during the performance. So often the dancers were dancing on stage and the audience couldn't see them because the light from the headlights were blinding them. So again, Picabia always reverses cause and effect. So why the lights, which are supposed to reveal, in this case, are blinding. At the intermission of Relâche, Picabia showed his film, Entr'acte, which simply means intermission. It's the great Dada film of Picabia, the only one. Man Ray is in it, Duchamp is in it, they're playing chess, of course. And these are two stills. One is this dancer. Again, this, if you were to see this in video, the dancer is going up and down in this circular pattern. It turns out to be a man, so there's a reversibility of gender. I don't think Picabia was either Picabia or Duchamp were particularly interested in that in a way that's current. I think for Picabia, it's simply that one thing always reverses and becomes another. And the last act of Entr'acte is a death. And the last scene is this delirious funeral procession that starts, again, going around, there's the coffin, going around the circular mini Eiffel Tower and gaining in speed until the end, after which the Borland, I think is his name, jumps out of the coffin, and speed literally brings him back to life in the conclusion of this film. So returning to Jason Rhoades' sculpture and this great Picabia from 1921, I hope we recognize that image of Picabia up above that Ingrid flashed twice. There's Picabia, the funny guy, grinning behind the wheel. And this is an amazing Dada painting called The Joyous Widow. La Veuve Joyeuse. Picabia seems happy. I think he leaves it as an open question for us why the widow is joyous. What has she lost in order to gain happiness? And I would argue that there's this very willfully crude, speedy drawing copying the painting. So one thing crudely, speedily leads to another. I would argue that what she has lost to gain happiness is simply the past, the speed of moving from thing to thing for Picabia, and in some ways for Jason, I think, is what their art sought as happiness. Okay, this takes us a little beyond the current project, but it's an amazing Hannah Arendt quote that I recommend to everyone I've been obsessed with for many years about Virgil, who makes the very same point, because in Virgil's Aeneid, the foundation of Rome is seen as a re-foundation. Beginnings are always seen as re-beginnings. This is a very, although Hannah Arendt is not a Rhodesian or Picabian figure, a very similar aesthetic point. I would also strongly recommend Fast and Furious 3 Tokyo Drift. I wonder if Jason liked it. It's an incredible movie with an incredible Picabian ending, because it literally has a kind of resurrection. Has anyone seen Tokyo Drift? Yeah, do you remember what happens at the end? Who shows up? It's very important. And we conclude on that note. This on the right, this is Jason after his, I guess, victory in his own circuit race, the Young White Grand Prix, an amazing and celebratory image. And this is the final image of Entr'acte, where the film reverses and Picabia in reverse kicks his way back through the ending screen, starting everything in reverse and from the beginning again. Thank you.
I'm only moderately tired of listening to Charli XCX's Brat. It's been 3 whole days. So I decided to put on Brat, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not. My ire is pacified, for now. My lust amplified. It's not even summer, and it's hot. I'm only moderately peaked after listening to Charli XCX's Brat, and it's the same, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not. It's been 122 days. The rush doesn't hit the same. It is still summer. June 21, August 1st, September 12th. I'm driving. and I'm sitting all by myself inside a Caprice Classic driving down the 405 at 34th, waiting to get downtown, waiting. So I turn the dial. Rolls Royce's car wash is on. It reminds me not to park under the telephone wires where the pigeons roost and the mulberries fall. Ksh, ksh. Radio fuzz. Tracy Chapman's Fast Car plays. Live and die this way. How many hours have I been driving? I left at 5 a.m. and stopped in Somerset on my way to the falls before heading to the Big Bend and then the dunes. My mind drifts. The sky looks a heavenly blue. It is the Simpsons sky. A choir of angels announces, "The Simpsons." Are we all born Brat? Brats make messes. Banana, rice, apple toast. The tenets of balance and order, now chaos. Introduce a problem. Benny Andrews says in his lecture on collage that he introduced paper and texture to his paintings to propose a problem instead of polishing the apple. Here, substitute apple for freeze-dried peas, add some redfish roe and static electricity, some pesky styrofoam balls and invisible glue. The garden grows. It is still summer. The dial turns. Charlie's crash is on. Wow, this is a great radio station. She sings, "I'm high voltage, self-destructive, and it also legendary. I'm about to crash into the water, gonna take you with me." I do this thing when I drive over a bridge or through a tunnel where I crack the windows of my car regardless of the weather outside, because in some movies somewhere I heard it will be easier to get out of the car if I'm suddenly surrounded by water. I saw a video on the TV where a woman goes through a car wash, but she isn't in her car. Don't have a cow, man. He was rubber, we are glue. Whatever and forever sticks to you. So let's call him the baby driver. It is nearly impossible to think of drive without the onomatopoeic vrooms and whirs and beeps and skirts, all of which live outside of the car. Ayrton Senna said it's lonely driving a Grand Prix car, but very absorbing. I've experienced new sensations and want more. That is my excitement, my motivation. On the road, I see dashes. They never stop feeding me. Tick, 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 tick. I am a centipede. I am Excitebike. I am Ouroboros. I am Decepticon. I am a show on the road. Outside of my studio, I hear someone scream, "Ah! Look out, look out, look out, look out!" No, that was just Mary Wise. My mind wanders again. Ksh, ksh. Radio fuzz. I turn the dial, and I'm back to The Simpsons. It has been 14,999 days of Brat. It has been 12,718 days of Brat. It is day 123. I decide to start it from the top. Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat. I lick the sweat off my lip as it drips from my brow. I'm driving, and it's still summer.
Time for another definition. Construction, deconstruction. Antithetical concepts. Every work of art by Jason Rhoades is simultaneously construction and deconstruction. First, the work is physically constructed, then in the process of reception, the mental act of understanding, it is broken down into its component parts and mentally processed.
Okay. It is an honor to introduce our next performance. To give a bit of context, New York City playwright Charles Mee, known to many of us as Chuck Mee, is widely known for his expansive, imaginative, mind-bending texts. Some are loose adaptations of Greek plays and tragedies. Some are love stories. There are the Lives of Artists plays, the Hell on Earth plays, and one play in particular from the Wild and Crazy plays, called Under Construction, was inspired by the work of Jason Rhoades. Here today to perform scene 472, LA, which Chuck says can be played by a man or a woman, is the legend, the icon, the inspiration to us all, Morgan Bassichis.
Can I just say that my head is a lot better in LA? There's always a feeling. There's always a feeling when I'm sitting here, you know, and I'm driving around in the car, and I'm in and I'm out of my head. I'm in and out of reality, and if you know my work, you know there's a lot of it's never finished, right? So there's a lot of narrative threads. Okay, they interweave. How do you like self-portraiture? But not just that. Also fictional characters, right? Cultural commentary. Okay, humor, slapstick, right? Critique, theatricality, right? Entrepreneurship, yeah, and attitude, but more quests and discoveries, self-sampling. Is that? Hold on. Internal recycling. Does that? No. Okay. No. Auto cannibalism. No. Okay. And revelations, right? Cosmologies, coming together and coming apart and becoming something else, right? Something free form, something random, something non-hierarchical, something everywhere, nowhere, right? I don't know. It's and then you need an overview. You need an overview, or you need a point of view, right? Because it's all trees. There's no forest, and that means that there's no difference. There's no difference between here and there. And even though you still want to be both everywhere and nowhere, and it's all a blur. Right, it's all a blur, and the blur, let me say, could be permanent, and that would be a cool thing too, right? I've read that book. I know about the blur. I haven't read it, but I have it. I don't have it, but I've seen it on other people's. In any case, I understand art as the pursuit of something. As it's pulling me in some direction, and I don't understand why I'm going in this direction. But it's important that each piece creates a territory for me to go in. Okay, for example, so there's a piece. Maybe it's called like a perfect world, right? Okay, so in this piece, the thing is. Trigger warning, you can fall off, okay? And you can die, okay? It can kill you. And you can walk on the surface, but there's holes, there's cracks, okay? And there's soft spots, and there's traps, and they're just papered over. And I want to build something that mimics real life, right? I'm not interested in artists who close things down. I'm interested in situations which open things up. That's an optimistic perspective. That is. I want to build a work that includes the public, but also includes the artist. Okay, imagine you have children. And one is a drug addict, okay, crack. And one is a drug addict, ecstasy, okay? And one is 13, 4 kids, right? And one is just a genius. It's important to see each one in relationship to the other one. And in relationship to yourself. It's about seeing where all the positive parts are in the things that you have created. You have to deal with them. You have to like all of them the same. Because, what we have come to learn is that the future is made not by arguing well, but by speaking differently. And speaking differently, well, that's the job of poets. Because, the truth is not something that we discover, but it's something that we create. How it is to be a human being is not something we decide based on how it has always been, but because whether or not it has ever been that way before, this is who we want to be, okay? And this is how we want to behave now. Just because in the past there have been slaveholders and patriarchs, we are not destined to live the same way forever. And the reason people study history is so they can see the way things are. The way things are is not the only way they have been, or the only way they can be. So it's up to us to see what human nature can become. Thank you.
Morgan, will you do that again? That was amazing. Okay, final definition. Garage. And the garage, this work we're going to see is the work that's currently on view at Hauser Wirth, Los Angeles, in the final chapter of Drive. So, garage. Location. Besides their primary function as somewhere to keep a car, garages fulfill numerous other roles. In the loneliness of the situation and in one's concentration on the task at hand, ideas develop, decision-making, about the way that one could arrange the devices and tools. Jason Rhoades links the garage to the crafty, cranky hobbies that some men pursue in them, like cleaning and loading a gun, or tuning up the car, cherry, making it faster, louder, or more melodious, depending on the fashion of the day. In Cherry Makita, Honest Engine Work, the ex-racing car driver made a huge Makita drill with a Chevrolet motor engine. Rhoades' brother turned his parents' garage into his own room. The interior of this room and its contents inspired the artist, my brother Brancusi. So there's the sculpture, which was shown at the Whitney Biennial in 1995. And here's Jason's drawing of the sculpture. in this amazing new book, Illustrations. So it's a brand new book from Hauser Wirth Publications, and it's a facsimile of a sketchbook of drawings. And the book is very much the companion piece to Volume A Rhoades Referenz, from which we've been hearing these definitions. And it's full of illustrations of the key concepts of Rhoades's work. The original book was a gift from Rhoades and his wife, the artist Rachel Kadori, to their friends and their patrons, Ivan and Manuela Wirth. Inscribed in their copy, it says, "Because we know you love, because we know you love California." So the facsimile comes in this handsome cardboard slipcase, and copies are available in the bookstore for purchase. And we are pleased and proud that Drive 2 in New York comes to a close with the launch of this very special publication, which for me, I think of it as being a cowboy California artist's book of conceptual cartoons. So do check it out. Russell.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Another round of applause for these amazing